Hello and welcome to Spencer's Library. I'm Claudia and today I'm reviewing The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. This is a post-apocalyptic novel that was published in 1955 and it's actually the fourth John Wyndham novel that I've read, and it's a little different to his other ones. This did surprise me. I'm going to try and stay as spoiler-free as possible in this review, though of course while still talking about the basic premise of this novel. This is a post-apocalyptic novel set in the far future, and it's set in a world that is ravaged by the effects of some catastrophe, which we as the reader are led to believe is a nuclear catastrophe, but the characters in the book, who don't really know what exactly happened in their past, talk about this event as tribulation. And this right there is the reason why this one stands out to me among John Wyndham novels that I've read so far, because all of his other works that I've read so far have been set in a contemporary society. They've all been apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic sci-fi in one way or another, but this one is actually set in the far future and is therefore quite a different sort of setting to what I'm used to with John Wyndham. But the second reason why this one stood out to me is because it is a coming-of-age tale. It's told from the perspective of a young boy and then later a young man, and this sort of inner journey of understanding yourself and learning to deal with issues that arise from growing up. So a lot of the story isn't just concerned with this post-nuclear wasteland that the people are living in, but also is very much an internal journey about growing up and about finding yourself, like any good coming-of-age story has at the centre. The post-apocalyptic setting of this was one I absolutely loved. It's a sort of technologically regressed agrarian society that has sprung up in the wake of this nuclear disaster. And it's a very contained society. There is a sort of awareness of a big city somewhere far away where there's a government making rules, but most of this world is very contained, it's very rural, it's very cut off from everything. In fact, far more cut off from everything than both the characters and the reader assume at first. So all of the issues that the characters deal with, all of the problems that arise within this very small, tight-knit community are kind of village problems, but on a post-apocalyptic scale. The protagonist of the story and first-person narrator of it is a young boy named David, and he is in fact the son of the local preacher and also the owner of the biggest farmhouse in this community. And we get an idea of a very strictly religious community. David's father is the archetypal cult leader in a way. He's very rigid and very set in the rules and not above throwing his own family under the bus if necessary, if they don't conform to his rigid set of what he believes is right and wrong. The religion in this society is clearly an evolution, a spin-off of Christianity that has been influenced by this event of tribulation. And even though we don't go that much into the history of this theology, it felt very natural. It was very well explained how this sort of cult, how this sort of ideals emerged out of the nuclear catastrophe. Basically, the people in this society believe that tribulation, aka nuclear catastrophe, was sent as a punishment by God, and that it is their destiny to rebuild society as it was before. And because this book was written and published in the 1950s, it has a very mid-century idea of the effects of nuclear war on people, and especially of the effects of it on the human form, the human body, and I guess the human genome. So the religion in this book is based on worship of basically what they call the pure human form, and anything that deviates from this will be forcibly removed from society. So yes, this is a book about eugenics. I wasn't expecting that going into it, but there you go. Right at the beginning of the book, when David is still a young boy, he makes friend with a girl who, it turns out, has 6 toes on each of her feet, therefore making her not human according to the laws of the land. But obviously, because she's a friend of the protagonist, that sets in motion his own journey of doubts and his own questioning of the beliefs that his father preaches. And then very shortly after, we learn that David himself is keeping a secret, and that is that he has the ability to communicate telepathically with some other children in the neighborhood, some of whom he knows in person and some he doesn't know in person. Even though at the beginning of the book he's not quite aware of what that means, but as he grows older, as he observes the world around him, he learns very quickly that that makes him an abomination in the eyes of the church and of the law and of his own father. So there's a lot of self-discovery and of trying to come to terms with the fact that something that he sees as a part of himself is seen as unnatural by those around him. If the subtext alarm bells are going off in your head, yes, very much in mine as well. I have desperately looked actually online for a sort of queer reading of this. I have not found any. If you're aware of one, I would really like to see that sort of analysis of this book. As it is, I was astounded by how much this read like a, I want to say contemporary young adult book, but really this reminds me a lot of the young adult dystopian novels that I read when I was a teenager. So we're talking the sort of young adult dystopian novels that came out around the time of the Hunger Games. There's a lot of story tropes, of storytelling devices, of plot points that remind me so much of those. I always get the sense with John Wyndham novels that I read previously that he was a writer writing a few decades ahead of his time. His books always read so modern, but at the same time they are so deeply ingrained in the time that they were written. It's a bit of a paradox. It doesn't really make sense when I say it like that, but if you've read any John Wyndham novel, you probably know what I'm talking about. So much of this reads like it was written today, and so much of this reads like it's relevant to today's society. Dystopia and post-apocalyptic novels always reflect the time they're written, and they are not so much cautionary tales about what not to do in the future, although the message of that book is very clear. Please don't start a nuclear war. But they are also criticisms of their own time. And in this book, for example, we get a lot of that, not just from the idea of David and his friends having this ability that they have to keep hidden or they will be expelled from society. There's also a lot of commentary on things like fertility and children and family. For example, when children are born who do not conform to this ideal of the perfect human, the people who get blamed for that are the mothers, and they are the ones who get the blame, who are told that they didn't pray hard enough or that they have sinned, and then eventually they also get expelled from this society if they fail to produce children that conform to their standard. All of these things make this quite a bleak book compared to his other novels that I have read before. What's missing in this book that I enjoyed a lot about, for example, The Kraken Wakes or about The Day of the Triffids, is a sort of levity to it, a sense of humor. I'm not saying that as a negative because it would feel very out of place here to have the protagonist joke about in the manner that some of his other protagonists like to do. Because the protagonist is a very earnest young boy, the whole book is very earnest. And so the mood overall is a bit more somber than I am used to from John Wyndham. I said that this reads like the blueprint for 21st century young adult dystopian fiction. And if you have read a few of those types of YA dystopian novels, the way the plot develops might not be a complete surprise to you. There are a lot of recognizable things that remind me of later novels. It feels like this book is setting a precedent for later YA dystopian novels. I found that very interesting, but it did mean that the twists and turns were not maybe as twisty as if you go into it without that background of having read quite a few of those novels before. However, this was written in the mid-1950s, and it feels like reading a piece of post-apocalyptic YA history as that, I absolutely adored it. So I would recommend this book to you if any of this sounds interesting to you, if you like a bleak, dire, rural, post-apocalyptic setting where society is only just trying to get back on its feet. Now that's something I personally really enjoy reading about. I think you should read this if you're interested in coming-of-age stories, in stories about growing up, about fitting in while being different, about isolation and community, about found family versus biological family. I would so desperately like to see a queer analysis of this. There's got to be one somewhere. I can really highly recommend this book. If anything about this review sounded interesting to you, I think you'll enjoy it too. It does read quite different from John Wyndham novels that I've read before, so I'm not sure where I would place this in my overall ranking. I think I do slightly prefer the more light-hearted disaster stories that he's written, where sure, everyone's dying around us, there's this natural catastrophe or another, but we'll still have a laugh about it. There are no laughs in this book, but it was still an incredible read and just makes me want to explore even more of his work. Let me know if you've read this and what you thought of it, especially if you have read this and you're familiar with those early 2000s dystopian YA novels that I'm talking about. If you got the same kind of vibes from this book as well, do let me know. Thank you for watching. Bye!